In a quiet, forgotten corner of a cobblestone street that time itself seemed to have misplaced, stood a small shop named Pendleton's Timepieces. The air inside was thick with the scent of old wood, brass polish, and the gentle, ever-present symphony of 100 ticking clocks. Each tick was a heartbeat, each talk a breath, but the shop's own heart, Arthur Pendleton, had been beating out of time for nearly 50 years. Arthur was a man carved from stillness and sorrow. His hands, though gnarled with age, moved with the delicate precision of a surgeon as he mended the broken hearts of clocks. He could coax a grandfather clock that had been silent for a century back to life, yet he could not mend the silence in his own. His world was a loop of wending springs, polishing glass, and listening to the steady march of seconds he could no longer reclaim. Customers were few and far between. Most people now glanced at their phones for the time, not at the ornate, handcrafted guardians of hours that lined his shelves. On a dusty shelf behind the counter, away from prying eyes, sat his greatest failure and his most cherished treasure, an exquisite music box made of dark cherry wood, inlaid with mother of pearl. It depicted a pair of dancing bluebirds, their wings frozen mid-flight. It was meant to play a melody, Eleanor's melody, a simple, beautiful tune he had composed for his wife, but it never had, not completely. A crucial gear, no bigger than a child's fingernail, had broken the day it arrived, the day before Eleanor was taken from him by a sudden fever that burned through the town. That was 50 years ago. For 50 years, the music box had remained silent, a monument to an unfinished song and a life cut short. He had tried to fix it countless times. He had crafted hundreds of replacement gears, each one a fraction of a millimeter different from the last, but none could make the bluebirds dance. It was as if the box itself was in mourning, refusing to sing without its intended audience. One crisp autumn afternoon, the little bell above the door chimed, a sound so rare it made Arthur flinch. A young girl, no older than 10, with bright, curious eyes and a red scarf wrapped around her neck, stepped inside. "Wow," she breathed, her voice a splash of color in the monochrome shop. She spun around, taking in the walls of ticking clocks. "It's like being inside a giant's heart." Arthur just grunted from his workbench, not looking up from the watch he was dissecting. Children were noisy, and he preferred the predictable rhythm of his clocks. But the girl, whose name was Lily, was not easily deterred. She visited every day after school. She didn't demand his attention. She would simply sit on a small stool, watching him work, her silence a comfortable counterpoint to the ticking. She'd tell him about her day, a lost crayon, a new friend, a funny, shaped cloud, and Arthur found himself listening. Her voice was like the first chime of a clock he hadn't heard in years. One day, Lily's eyes fell upon the music box. "What's that one?" she asked, her voice soft. "It's the prettiest thing in here." Arthur's hands froze. "It's nothing," he said, his voice gruffer than he intended. "It's broken. You fix everything," she stated simply, as if it were an undeniable law of the universe. "Can't you fix that?" A pain, old and familiar, tightened in his chest. "Some things," he said quietly, "are not meant to be fixed." But Lily's question had dislodged something within him. That night, long after the last rays of sun had faded, Arthur took the music box down from the shelf. He ran a finger over the smooth, cool wood. A memory, sharp and vivid, bloomed in his mind. He and Eleanor, young and full of dreams, were sitting by a lake. She was humming a little tune, a melody that seemed to be born from the sunlight dancing on the water. One day, he had promised her, "I'll put your song in a box, so you can hear it whenever you want." Her laugh was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard, more perfect than any clock's chime. He opened the back of the box. There it was, the tiny, intricate mechanism, a city of gears and pins, all motionless. And there was the gap where the final, crucial gear should have been. He had kept all his failed attempts in a small velvet pouch, hundreds of them, each one a testament to his failure. The next day, Lily came in with a small paper bag. My mum baked cookies, she announced, placing one on his workbench. Chocolate chip. They can help you think. Arthur looked from the cookie to her hopeful face. For the first time in a very long time, he felt a flicker of something other than grief. He picked up the cookie and took a bite. "Thank you, Lily," he murmured. He decided to try one last time, not for himself, but for the memory that Lily's innocence had reawakened. He wasn't just a clockmaker, he was a keeper of promises. He didn't use any of his old, failed gears. He started fresh. He took a new piece of brass and began to file. He didn't use his precise measurements or his magnifying lopes. Instead, he closed his eyes and let his hands remember. He remembered the cadence of Eleanor's laugh, the rhythm of her breathing as she slept, the gentle tempo of their life together. He poured not just his skill, but his love, his loss, and his 50 years of longing into that tiny piece of metal. For a week, he worked tirelessly. The rest of the shop fell silent as he neglected to wind the clocks. The only sound was the soft shock of his file against the brass. Lily would come and sit, watching him quietly, understanding that something important was happening. Finally, it was done. The new gear was not perfect in its symmetry, but it felt right. It pulsed with a faint warmth in his palm. With trembling hands, he fitted it into the mechanism. It clicked into place as if it were always meant to be there. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding louder than any grandfather clock in the shop. He turned the small winding key on the bottom of the box. The mechanism whirred softly, and then it happened. A single, clear note emerged, then another and another. The melody, hesitant at first, grew in confidence. It was Eleanor's melody. It was the sound of sunlight on water, of quiet laughter, of a promise finally kept. The two bluebirds on top began to turn, their slow, graceful dance a ballad of resurrected joy. Tears streamed down Arthur's face, silent and warm. They weren't tears of sorrow, not entirely. They were tears of release. He wasn't fixing a broken object. He was finally letting go of his broken past. The melody didn't bring Eleanor back, but it brought back the beauty of her memory, unburdened by the weight of his failure. When Lily arrived the next day, the shop was different. A gentle melody drifted through the air, weaving itself between the now resumed ticking of the clocks. Arthur was standing by the window, a soft smile on his face, watching the people outside. He saw Lily and beckoned her over. He held out the music box. "For you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily's eyes widened. "But it's yours. It's hers. Memories are not meant to be kept locked away on a dusty shelf," Arthur said, placing the box in her small hands. "They are meant to be shared." Her song was silent for too long. It's time for someone else to hear it. Lily carefully took the box. As the melody played on, she saw not just an old clockmaker, but a man who had held on to love for a lifetime. And Arthur, looking at the young girl with the kind eyes, saw not an end, but a new beginning. The ticking of the clocks no longer sounded like seconds slipping away. It sounded like a steady, peaceful heartbeat. The melody was no longer unfinished. The song was complete. And in the heart of the old clock shop, time at last had begun to heal,